An unforgivable mistake of mine destroyed my reality. I cheated on my husband, and it destroyed our lives in ways I couldn't even imagine. I never thought I could destroy something so pure, something that felt like it would last forever. Ethan was everything to me. He wasn't just my husband. He was the anchor that held me steady, the person who loved me in a way I didn't think was possible. Every day, I'd wake up to the sound of him quietly moving around our kitchen, humming softly as he made coffee. He always made me breakfast, every single morning, and I'd take it for granted. The toast, the eggs, the little heart he'd draw with ketchup on the side. I thought it was sweet, but I never really stopped to appreciate just how much love and care he put into everything he did for me. I didn't know it then, but I would regret those simple moments more than anything else. It was about a year ago when I met Ryan. He was a new hire at the office, full of energy and charm. He wasn't like Ethan, not in the slightest. Where Ethan was calm and thoughtful, Ryan was spontaneous and thrilling. It started off so harmless. We'd chat during lunch breaks, exchanging stories about work and life. He'd make me laugh in a way that felt refreshing, a way that made me feel like a different person, someone more carefree, more alive. I wasn't aware of it at the time, but those small conversations were the first steps toward the mistake that would unravel my life. It was about 3 months in when things began to escalate. One evening, after a particularly long day at work, Ryan suggested we grab a drink at the bar down the street. I hesitated for a moment. I should get home. Ethan's probably waiting for me, I said, but Ryan just smiled and shrugged. It's just one drink. Come on, you deserve it. I caved. Maybe it was the stress of work. Maybe it was the thrill of being around someone so different from Ethan. But I agreed. We sat at the bar, the dim lighting casting a warm glow over us. We talked for hours, about everything and nothing. I laughed more than I had in years. The drinks kept coming, and by the time we left, I was tipsy, my thoughts hazy. Ryan walked me to my car, and as we stood there under the streetlight, something happened. He leaned in. I knew what was about to happen, and for a split second, I thought about Ethan. How he'd probably be at home, wondering why I was late. But then I kissed Ryan. It was as if a switch flipped inside me. That kiss led to more, and before I knew it, we were entangled in an affair that lasted for months. We'd sneak around after work, meeting at his apartment, in hotel rooms, anywhere we could find a moment of privacy. With Ryan, I felt alive, reckless, and free. The way his hands traced my skin, the way he whispered in my ear made me forget everything. I'd close my eyes, letting the rush take over, ignoring the guilt that always lingered in the back of my mind. Each time we were intimate, it felt exhilarating and wrong at the same time, as if I were running toward a cliff I couldn't stop myself from falling off. But every time I returned home, the weight of what I was doing grew heavier. Ethan, as always, greeted me with that same loving smile. He had no idea. Every evening, he'd ask me how my day was, his blue eyes filled with genuine interest as he handed me a cup of tea. "I missed you today," he'd say, his voice soft and warm. And each time, guilt gnawed at my insides, but I buried it. I buried it so deep that I convinced myself everything was fine until it wasn't. It was about 4 months into the affair when the guilt became unbearable. One night, as I lay in bed next to Ethan, watching him sleep peacefully, I felt it. This overwhelming wave of shame and self-loathing. I couldn't breathe. My chest tightened, and tears began to spill down my cheeks. I had betrayed the one person who had always been there for me, who had loved me more than anyone ever had. I didn't deserve his love. I didn't deserve him. The next morning, as Ethan prepared breakfast, I could barely look at him. I watched him move around the kitchen, his movements so familiar, so comforting. And that's when it hit me. I had destroyed the best thing in my life for something fleeting, something meaningless. Ryan wasn't worth it. He never had been. Weeks passed, and the guilt ate away at me. I became distant, quieter. I stopped meeting Ryan, cut him off completely, but the damage was already done. I knew I had to tell Ethan. He deserved to know the truth, no matter how much it would hurt him. One evening, as we sat together in the living room, I decided it was time. My heart pounded in my chest as I turned to him, my hands trembling. "Ethan," I whispered, barely able to get the words out. He looked at me, concern flickering in his eyes. "What's wrong?" "I need to tell you something," I said, my voice shaking. I felt the bile rise in my throat as I tried to form the words. I've been unfaithful." The silence that followed was suffocating. Ethan's face, once filled with love and warmth, went completely blank. He just stared at me, as if trying to process what I had just said. For a moment, he didn't say anything. Then, in a voice so soft I almost didn't hear it, he asked, "Why?" I couldn't answer him. Tears streamed down my face as I tried to explain, but how do you explain something so horrible? Was I not enough? His voice cracked, and it shattered something inside me. You were always more than enough," I sobbed. "I don't know why I did it. It was a mistake. I didn't mean to hurt you." But the damage was done. Ethan didn't yell, didn't scream. He just stood up, his face pale, and walked out of the room. He didn't look back. That night, he slept on the couch. The next morning, he left for work without saying a word to me. And that's how it was from then on. Ethan didn't yell, didn't confront me. He didn't even ask for details. He just withdrew. Day by day, he became a shell of the man I once knew. He started doing things differently. He no longer waited for me at the door when I came home. The little notes he'd leave for me in the kitchen were gone. The warm good morning kisses were replaced with silence. He stopped cooking breakfast, stopped humming as he moved around the house. His presence was still there, but it was cold, distant, like a stranger had taken over his body. I tried to make things right. Several times I tried talking to him, reaching out, but every attempt only seemed to push him further away. "Ethan, please," I begged one night, my voice cracking. "I'm sorry, I'll do anything to fix this." But he just looked at me, his eyes void of the love they once held. "There's nothing left to fix," he whispered before walking away. One evening, I heard him in the shower, the water running for much longer than usual. Curious, I walked toward the bathroom, and that's when I heard it. Ethan was crying. I froze outside the door, my heart breaking as I listened to the quiet sobs coming from inside. I wanted to rush in, to hold him, to tell him how sorry I was, but I couldn't. I had caused this. I was the reason he was falling apart, and I didn't know how to fix it. The weeks dragged on, and I realized that I had killed him, not physically, but emotionally. Ethan wasn't living anymore. He was just existing. And it was all my fault. When my family found out, it only made things worse. My mother, who had always been so supportive of my marriage, looked at me with disgust. "How could you do this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "You had everything, and you threw it away." My father didn't speak to me at all. My siblings avoided me, their eyes filled with judgment and disappointment. I had become the outcast, the one who had ruined everything. They hated me. I could see it in their faces, in the way they spoke to me, or rather, didn't speak to me. I had lost everything. I had lost Ethan, my family, and worst of all, I had lost myself. There was no going back, no way to fix the damage I had done. I knew I couldn't stay. Ethan needed to heal, and I wasn't helping him by staying in his life. So, I made the hardest decision of my life. One evening, I handed Ethan the divorce papers. He looked at them for a long moment, his hands shaking. "Why now?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Because you deserve a chance to be happy again," I said, tears streaming down my face. "And I can't give that to you anymore." He didn't argue. He didn't fight me on it. He just signed the papers, the finality of it hitting me like a punch to the gut. I packed my things, and the next day, I left town. I moved away, far enough that I wouldn't be a reminder of the pain I had caused. As the months passed, leaving didn't absolve me of the guilt. In fact, the distance only made it worse. Every night I lay in bed, unable to sleep, my mind racing with memories of Ethan. Sometimes I'd unlock my phone and scroll through old pictures of us, smiling, happy, in love. There was one photo in particular, a candid shot of us laughing at a barbecue with friends. His arm was around my waist, his face turned toward me with that look of pure adoration that I had grown so used to. Now, I could barely stand to look at it without breaking down. Many nights I found myself staring at that photo, sobbing quietly into my pillow, wishing I could go back in time and undo everything. I would press my forehead against the phone screen, whispering, "Please, Ethan, forgive me. Please find happiness. I hope you can move on." I didn't deserve his forgiveness, but I prayed for it anyway. I prayed that somehow, wherever he was healing, even if I never would. I heard through mutual friends that Ethan hadn't been the same since the divorce. He had become quieter, more withdrawn, barely seeing anyone outside of work. They told me he wasn't dating anyone, wasn't putting himself out there, and it broke my heart all over again. I had left, thinking it would help him heal, but it seemed like the scars I left were deeper than I'd imagined. I tried to move forward with my life, but it was impossible. No matter where I went or what I did, Ethan's absence haunted me. I'd catch myself looking at couples in the street, wondering if they loved each other the way Ethan had loved me, the way I had once foolishly taken for granted. I often replayed the moments before I confessed to him, wondering what would have happened if I'd never told him the truth. Would we still be together? Would he still love me, even with my guilt eating me alive? But deep down, I knew the truth. What I had done had broken something between us that could never be repaired. Ethan's love had been so deep, so pure, and I had shattered it. And no matter how much I prayed, no matter how much I wished things could be different, there was no going back. One night, months after the divorce, I sat on the floor of my new apartment, looking at the photo of Ethan again. The tears came, just like they always did, and I whispered into the empty room, "I'm so sorry, Ethan. I hope you can be happy again. I hope you can forgive me someday." But I knew forgiveness wasn't something I could expect. I had hurt him too deeply, and now I was the one left to carry the weight of that hurt every day for the rest of my life. And so I live with the regret every single day, knowing that a moment of weakness, a fleeting thrill, had cost me the greatest love I will ever know, a love I will never find again. There's no going back from that. There's only the memory of what could have been and the endless nights where I pray for Ethan's happiness, knowing I was the one who stole it from him. But even in my darkest moments, when the weight of guilt feels unbearable, there's one fragile hope I cling to. Maybe, just maybe, many years from now, when time has dulled the edges of our memories and we've both moved on in different ways, our paths will cross again. Perhaps in a crowded street, a cafe, or at some quiet corner of life we never expected, we'll see each other. And in that fleeting moment, Ethan might look at me the way he used to, with love. Not the shattered pieces of it, but the soft, gentle love that once filled his eyes. That's the hope I carry with me as I cry myself to sleep every night. The hope that one day, no matter how distant, we might find some form of peace. And maybe, just maybe, he'll forgive me. And I'll see that love in his eyes one last time.